Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing very well. Another really fascinating interview that I'm really looking forward to. We've got Chris here, and I guess the main kind of achievement that we've got you for is RAF Tornado F.3 pilot. Hello Chris, and thank you for coming.
Hello, how you doing, Cap?
Yes, okay, thank you. Well, actually I'm a little bit ill today, but we're British, and we're stiff upper lip, and we're just going to blast through, because that's what we do. So, I'll read your synopsis out first of all. Dropped out of school during A-levels because I was stupid. Man, can I relate to that? You don't know how much I can relate to that. Joined the RAF in 1983 as a radar technician and fixed F.4 Phantom radars until I put myself through night school with a lot of help from the RAF. In 1991, started flight training in the RAF. Flew the Chipmunk T-10, the Jet Provost Mark 3 and Mark 5. Oh, I've got a soft spot for them. Tucano, Hawk, I've got a soft spot for all of this actually, and up to the Tornado F.3, Tornado fighter variant if you like. During this time, also flew air experience flights for kids at weekends in the Bulldog and later the Grob Tutor. Did a master's degree, again with the help of the RAF, and the Aerosystems course. Went into development of Eurofighter Typhoon, mostly DASS and MIDS, I'm sure we'll come back to that, as a ground job while running the F.3 sim at Coningsby, and taught data link in the Typhoon school. Flown Red Flag as both red and blue, and a bunch of other exercises around the world. Lived in the UK, Germany, Italy, Saudi, Typhoon sim instructor, and now Poland. Left the RAF in 2008 and now a pilot for the largest private jet operator in the world. Married with 4 kids, 2 still at home, and a dog. Play guitar and piano. Oh, I didn't read that before. Very good. And have been in a couple of bands. Look at that. I've been in a couple of bands as well. Happy, which is nice. We seem quite similar, apart from you're a success and I'm a failure. This actually seems like we seem quite similar. Right, Chris. So what? In fact, let me do a quick spiel. I have an attachment to the F.3 in that from 1980 to 1989, my dad worked at a place called Cambridge Consultants. We lived near a place called Cambridge. In fact, I was born in 1980. And he got a contract in 1980 for the 9 years for the production from the RAF of the radar analog to digital converter. So it would take analog signals direct from the radar, turn it into a digital, and give it to you in some kind of useful format. And the interesting thing is, I'm sure it's all declassified now, but the interesting thing about it from a project for him was that he had to do this, and it had to be a very high performance and reliable machine. But his brief was that it wasn't allowed to create any kind of EM emission. So it means it couldn't have, for instance, little fans whirring around like you have in a computer or a car, whatever to call it, because the EM emission would have done something nasty to the radar. So they had to design it. And they designed this thing into a big block of aluminium or something, and acted as like a solid heatsink. And they were very proud of that. And they made all of them there that went into every F.3 apparently ever built, or at least by us. So I'm still looking for one of those units. Someone had to have chopped an F.3 up somewhere and still have one of these units, so I'm going to find it. That's my claim to fame. Not quite as good as yours, but that's the best we can get. What we usually do, Chris, is I'm sure you know, we ask the public to send their questions in, however crazy and weird they are, for good or for bad. Then we pass them straight on to you with no filtering, and you just have to suck it up, basically. Anything before we start kicking off with the questions?
No, go ahead.
What were the payload capabilities of the Tornado?
So I can only talk for the F.3, not for the GR series, because I never flew that aircraft. But the heaviest I ever flew was with 2 underwing tanks. There were 2 sorts of underwing tanks. There was a 1,500 litre tank and a 2,250 litre tank. 2 of those, 4 Skyflash, 4 Sidewinders on launchers that had chaff on the back of them. And then in the Gulf, we flew with the towed radar decoy and an extra chaff pod on the other wing, and it was like driving a truck.
Yeah, I bet it was. Am I right in saying, just to get my facts right, the 4 radar guided missiles were on the belly or fuselage, whatever you want to call it, and the sidewinders were on. Right, and the I see. So the fin kind of stuck in, didn't it?
Yeah, so the fin and the wings, or the top ones, were recessed into the aircraft body, And when you fired the missiles, there were two rams that were gas operated, I think, from a cartridge, which pushed the missile down into the airflow, and then it went off.
Right, and the sidewinders were on kind of well, they're actually on the wings. They weren't on the gloves, were they? On the wings, and they kind of pivoted round.
So there's a pylon underneath the inner wing stations, and as the wings swept, they would turn to make sure they were still facing forwards. And on either side of that pylon, there was a rail, and the rail contained, like I said, chaff at the back, but also a nitrogen bottle with cooling air to cool the seeker head. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Roger. That coolant bottle, out of interest, this is something interesting as in DTS at the moment. Roughly, from when you turned that coolant bottle on, how long did you have before you ran out of coolant for the seeker heads?
I don't know.
I've heard.
I left the Air Force in 2008, and I honestly don't remember. But the longest missions I did were 4.5 hours long, and it wasn't ever a problem.
Oh, really? Well, that's interesting, because as far as we think, I mean, it's hard getting information out of ED, as you'll probably find out as you go on your journey. We don't think it's modelled at the moment, and we've heard quotes of about 90 minutes, and that means we do missions longer than 90 minutes. That means at some point we're going to have to start worrying about, when they implement it, about when we turn our cooling on, but no one knows out there. So at least we've got that from you, but maybe
but that's specific to the Tornado. Right. The F series of fighters, the F-15, F-16, F-18, I don't know, because I've never operated them, so I don't know.
Roger. Okay, interesting. Wow. Right, so that's that. What was Red Flag like to do compared to your expectations, or how it was? A lot of these guys are going to be non-English speakers, so you have to kind of read between the lines, but
sure.
What's your answer there?
Fantastic, really. Mm-hmm. It's the only time, unless you go to war, that you are in an environment with so many aircraft and so many different capabilities, E3s, rivet joints, bombers, fighters, mixed, SEAD, etc., etc. And the first time I went, I was a junior pilot on the squadron, and I think it was 500 hours. If you didn't have 500 hours on type, you weren't allowed to play. So I was the sandwich boy. I went and got pizzas and burgers for the guys at lunchtime. But once you get into the Blue Air stuff, the way that the day is run, the planning, briefing, and operational side of it is exactly like it was during the Gulf. Exactly the same. Wow. So you really do train as you fight as you train. It was exactly the same and quite incredible. And the area is stuffed full of weapons simulators. The guys doing Red Air are work in a way that at the beginning of the week of the Red Flag, they're very tame, they're very scripted. They may be using shorter range weapons, but by the end of the week, they are full on, handcuffs off, really, really hard bandits to deal with. It's the best training I've ever had, no doubt about it. And it's in Vegas for a week.
Well, there you go, best thing. Right, yeah, I'm yet to find someone who doesn't have only good things to say about Red Flag. Everyone's, I guess it's like a fighter pilot's dream, or any kind of pilot's dream, isn't it? Right. Okay, very good. We'll probably come back to that at some point. Have you had any close encounters whilst flying, however you quantify what a close encounter is?
Well, when I read that, I didn't quite know what it meant. I can tell you some embarrassing things. So when I was a student, will the camera be on YouTube so they'll be able to see me?
Yes, they will, unfortunately. Right, okay. Because if you're going to do something...
No, it's fine. On the Jet Provost, when you learn low-level navigation, you have this whole clock map ground series, and hats and post hats. So they're the checklists: heading, altitude.
I've learned what they are now, Chris. I've learned what they are.
Yeah, and you pull the map out and you go right, and you have it up in front of your face, and you say, right, in 30 seconds, it's going to be a church. And when I get to the church, I'm going to turn right to this heading, and this is my timing, and I'm early or late, and I'll adjust my speed. And you put the map away, and you continue your lookout. And you keep it under your backside in the aeroplane. Now, as a student, you should have it up here, so you're looking out still for threats. But as a student, of course, I was like this, and North Yorkshire was at that time full of jet provosts, all rushing around at 250 feet. and the instructor next to me reached across to lift my hand up to put it in the right place. And as he did, he saw the other jet provost over there, which we very, very nearly hit. And he sort of squeaked, "I have control!" And we barrel rolled over the top of him. So, yeah, that's the closest I've come to another aeroplane. I did very, very embarrassingly, when we first started flying with night vision goggles, doing 1v1 over the North Sea at night, chase a star for about 5 minutes.
Whoopsie.
That was quite embarrassing. Mm-hmm. But no, I've never seen any aliens or UFOs or anything like that. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's both of those things I've done myself. I myself, virtually, obviously, I've chased stars, as I'm sure pretty much every well, should I have? I've had a full dogfight pretty much with a star, and and one thing I always tell my guys, and again, I'm no virtual expert, but I've had plenty of experience. One thing I always try and drum into my guys is what I call the one instrument rule. But I guess the same applies to maps. So that is, after every instrument check, say speedo, nav, VSI, whatever, have a quick look out the window. Next instrument, have a quick look out the window. Next instrument, because how many times we've had exactly the same thing in formation, and one guy will just smash into the ground, or one guy will just smash into the other guy, and it's like, oh, I was checking that instrument and that instrument, and then so I guess that's true in real life as well.
When I was teaching kids to fly or giving them air experience, I used to tell them all the things that are going to kill you are outside the aeroplane. So that's where you want to look. Mm-hmm. And you learn to fly with using the horizon, the real one, not an artificial mm-hmm. one, to try and stop people having that sort of computer sim, looking down, focused inside mentality, and get their head out and get it moving around. And I found it's the same in DCS, even though the visual acuity is not superb, and I have some issues with depth perception in it. In a real airplane, you can see if someone's at 10 miles, 8 miles, 6 miles, 4 miles, but it's much more difficult in DCS. But yeah, keep your head on a swivel and keep your head out. Very, very important. Super important for safety. Yeah,
I'm teaching. I don't do much teaching anymore, but I've got one guy that I am teaching. He is actually a real life pilot, but he's just terrible kind of computer gamer, should we say. Excellent pilot, terrible computer gamer. So I'm kind of teaching him at the moment how to transfer his excellent real life piloting skills into the, I mean, gaming is not quite the right word, but you know what I mean, on a computer it is simply different.
Is he a commercial pilot?
He is at the moment. I think it's just private. And
in the commercial world, you are nailed onto the instruments all the time.
Yeah, and that's
because you're flying in controlled airspace. Radar's keeping you separated. You have TCAS as well to keep you separated, and it's all about flying super, super accurately. But if you're when you're in a two-man crew or two-person crew, the pilot who's not flying should be looking out the window. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, and this is exactly the problem. I didn't actually realise this was a thing, and because I've only ever done this, I didn't realise this was a thing. But at the end of the session every time, I was like, why did you lose me there? Why did you accelerate too much? And at the end of it, he had to explain he's not actually looking out the window. He's sitting down, staring at his gauges, flying his Cessna or whatever. And then we finally got through. No. What you got to do is you've got, when I call it a padlock, you got a padlock yourself. Your eyes are never going into your instruments, and you almost kind of use your peripheral vision is what I do. That's not quite correct, but you're just going to bounce your ride down onto the speedo quickly. Bounce your ride down onto that. You can't sit there and stare at the thing because it's all about situational awareness, visual situational awareness, VFR. So it's just something really interesting I found that I'd never really thought of before. But yeah. Okay, very, very good. Question number 4. Was the F.3 actually an effective air-to-air platform compared to, say, F.14?
Well, so you've got to remember it was designed as a low-level bomber. So it had a really stable wing, a high-drag wing, if you understand aerodynamics. Basically what that means is it doesn't produce a lot of lift, but it's super stable. And the engines had a little bit too much bypass. So as you got up high, they were a little bit weaker than an F-14, F-15, but down at low level, they were super fuel efficient. So the GR series of airplanes were designed to fly a long way into the Warsaw Pact and drop nukes. That's what they were for. So the F3 was stretched with a bit more fuel, and the wicks turned up on the engines a little bit. And at low level, it went like a train. It was incredible. It was incredible just how quickly it would go at low level. But once you got above 20, 25,000 feet, it's the wing engine combination started to show their limitation. Against the 15s, 16s, 18s, and we're talking sort of mid-90s now, you did stand a chance, and you did have a good capability because you had two of you in the cockpit. And we used to talk about, instead of beating his weapon system, which might be better than yours, you try and beat the person in the cockpit. So if we were fighting Americans or those types of airplanes, we'd often have to have, one side's hands tied, because it's the same in DCS. If you fly, F-16 versus F-16, AIM 120B versus AIM 120B, doesn't really, it's good fun to prove you're better than the other person. But in the real military world, it's pointless training, because you're never really going to fight like that. So you would probably have target simulation, generally Soviet, for my era, Soviet Warsaw Pact weapons. So the aircraft was good, definitely good. The mission computer, the radar, the data link, and particularly the radar warning receiver were absolutely top notch. They were really very, very good indeed. And a good navigator could bring the best out of that. And you could work together as a team to really do a great job. The problem was you couldn't go, you could go Mach 1.5 at 40,000 feet, but it would only be in a straight line. And as soon as you start to turn, you're going down again because of a lack of lift. So compared with the F-14, it's a big aeroplane. I would say similar. The F-14 had Phoenix, of course, but that had its own limitations. I'm not sure. I've not used the F-14 in DCS. I don't know if how accurately the weapons are modelled, although it's a weapon that's gone now. Did have its limitations. So was it an effective air-to-air platform? Absolutely yes, but it was an interceptor, not a dogfighter. And if you're going to merge with a MiG-29, Su-27, F-15, F-16, you need to beat them before you get to the merge. And if you get to the merge and you haven't, you need to get out quick. So it wasn't really a turning, burning machine.
Right, yeah. Almost in a way kind of reminds me of like a updated English Electric Lightning or something. Get up there fast, fire a missile, that's the end of it.
It was designed to shoot down bears coming down from the north through the Greenland Iceland-UK gap up in that area with tanker support and an E3 to protect the UK from strike. That's what it was for.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Okay. I'd actually just one thing to clear up. It's a long time since I studied Tornado, a long time, but one thing that always confused me is that the top speed, I know you technically never actually do this top speed, but purely out of top trumps, top speed of the ground variants was around a 1.5 Mach, 1.6 Mach, something like that. And on my top trumps card, it always says the F3 could do Mach 2.2. Is that just complete BS? Or
No, the aircraft was a slightly different shape. If you look at the noses, because the radar was put in, the nose was made longer and pointier.
Yeah.
The fuselage was a bit longer because there was an extra fuel tank, and the engines were turned up a little bit. They ran a bit hotter than the GRs. I got 1.92 out of one once. Wow. That was as fast as I got. I'm trying to get Mach 2, never managed.
It's incredibly hard in a real aircraft with.
Yeah, and when you take it out of burner, it's like hitting a brick wall.
That's funny. Right. Okay. Good. Very good. There's punch on. Okay, what is it like to actually bomb a place for the first time? Brackets during practice or something. I'm sure you have. I'm sure you were using actual munitions once or twice.
Well, so the only bombing I've done, because I went to the F3, which was air-to-air only, was on the Hawk. So on the Hawk, you did air-to-ground strafe. Had a 30mm Aiden cannon, I think, and you could put bombs on it. And for practice, we used little 3-kilogram practice bombs because you could carry 6 of them. It was good fun. I wasn't particularly good at it. So, what's it like? well, you're concentrating. A lot of the time, people say, "Well, it must have been really exciting," but you're really working very hard to do your job, and when you think about it afterwards, especially with a beer with mates, it's great fun. But at the time, you tend to be just focused on it and doing your job. So you tend not to go, yeehaw, Jester's dead, and all that stuff. So the only things I've bombed are ranges. Sols.
Yeah, just out of interest, I mean, this isn't necessarily bombing, but just the ethos we were talking about there of concentrating. Was there a lot of anxiety as well about, oh, what if I cock up? What if I cock up? Or was that not a thing?
It is, but it's the only job I've ever had where you're assessed every single day. And it's not just your boss that's assessing you, it's your peers as well. So those that fly with you. So the members of your flight, the authorizing guy, the guy or girl who's sitting behind you, you are assessed and graded every single day you go to work. And that, if you're struggling, that can be really hard to deal with. Once you get to a reasonable level of competence, it becomes a bit more of a competition between you to try and be the best. But initially, it's hard work. Your first year on a frontline squadron is really hard work. It is, but it is rewarding. There are little nuggets throughout your career that you think back on, little nuggets of gold that, where you can stand in a bar and go, when I was in 1984.
Very good.
Bore everybody.
Okay.
But,
sorry. Yeah. Good answer. Okay. Big question. Many of the success stories that I hear from the RAF seem to have a common theme, which is that it's usually the RAF's small size that affords it the ability to implement a decentralized command structure. In comparison to other air forces, RAF brackets and to a large extent Royal Navy pilots are less regimented in order to allow for more flexibility when employing tactics. Did you see evidence of this when training with other nations? And if so, do you think it was done deliberately?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. The American military machine is so big, it has to be quite standardized. Or in terms of the Air Force, the Marines, the Navy are in a certain way. I'm sorry, my dog is trying to play with me. And yeah, because the RAF is smaller, we did have more flexibility, and we were encouraged to be, shall we say, creative with tactics, because that's the way you learn, and that's you try different. Bless you, George. Try different things every day, every time you go flying, depending on the threat. Try and beat the guy in a different way. Definitely, I don't know who asked that, but he or she is quite right. We did have much more flexibility.
Just as purely speaking in general, not experience-based, but generalities, do you think there was any kind of evidence or use of that in Desert Storm? Or do you think everyone was playing from exactly the same song sheet?
No, we were playing very much to the, America led that. And America is so big, you're fitting into their operation. You're adding to it, but you're certainly, the British are in no position to, we're in a position to say maybe we should do something different, and certainly something we can talk about with the Americans, because we have a very good relationship with them. But when it comes to mission day, if the mission commander says you're going to do this, then unless there's some sort of safety reason why you shouldn't do it, then you're going to do it.
All right. And that question came from just when I think of Desert Storm, or what I can remember, I was young at the time. What I can remember is the Americans up 40,000 feet with their F-16s and their F-15s and this kind of stuff. And then I remember the RAF scraping the desert dunes in their Tornadoes and maybe even Buccaneers. I really can't. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
now.
Buccaneers in Gulf War One. Yeah.
And just from a kind of layman's point of view, you got that kind of difference of idea. But I mean, that sounds probably it was just tactical in that. That's just the way that.
Well, your fighter sweep's going to be up high because. If you want to throw something a long way, an air-to-air missile, you want to be going as high and fast as you can, because you throw it further. It's as simple as that. And the weapons that the RAF were using, so high drag and slick bombs and JP-223, the thing with the mines for anti-airfield, were all delivered from low level, and that was as a result of Cold War tactics to get underneath radars.
Roger. Okay. Right. 7. Personal one here. Everyone makes them, and I make lots of them. What was the biggest cock-up you ever made while flying? I thought you were willing to talk about.
I think I nearly hit the ground once.
Oopsie. That hurts.
Yeah. In the Falklands.
Oh.
Doing there's a SAM unit down there with rapiers, and we used to provide training for them. So we used to run in at very low level, brake when we were spiked, pitch, start chaffing, overbank, down, and run away at low level. The idea being that you chaff the radar off and it follows your chaff cloud as you descend back. And I remember rolling out, pointing at the ground, and back sticking it and just flying away as if nothing had happened. But yeah, that's probably the biggest mistake I've ever made. That's the other one, nearly hitting a guy in training, and that one in the Falklands. They're my two things that still bother me today.
Roger. Well, that's what humans do, but that's not bad. But can I ask what year that was, just to give me? I'm just trying to figure out.
99-ish.
Oh, so this is miles away from the conflict, right?
I'm very old. Cap.
Right. Okay.
Ancient with cobwebs on my ears.
Right, okay. What was the process like to be selected for a commission and for pilot training after joining as a non-commissioned rank?
Okay, so I was at Wildenrath at the time, 2nd Allied Tactical Air Force, 2 ATAF in Germany. And I'd been to school, as I said, to get the qualifications I needed, so I applied again. And what happens is your station, your RAF base, has to clear you to go. And the process I went through was like a mini selection that they would have done at Biggin Hill and then Cranwell, because the station told me it doesn't want to send off a duffer who embarrasses them. So I had an interview with my boss. Then I had an interview with a board on the base. And that was basically to see that whether I could pass the interviews down at selection. So we didn't do any of the, 2 pine poles and 10 people and getting them over shark-infested custard, those leadership exercises. But it was basically they tried to filter people out. They obviously didn't filter me out. I managed to squeeze through. But on the whole, they're very supportive. And the RAF, you're never going to get wealthy being in the military, but you will get looked after. And I have very fond memories of an organization that really looked after me for the 25 years I was in it. And that was a good example. They did help prepare me for the process of when I went to Cranwell. This
organization you speak of, was that within the RAF, or was that something separate?
Yeah, so that was just the RAF itself as a large thing. It really is. It's the closest I've come to working for a family, because everyone's of a similar mind. Everybody's, reasonably young. You have a very clear structure, and I'm an absolute, I love structure around me. I could never run my own business. I'd be terrified, and without that structure to lean back on, I'd probably be useless. And the military for me was a fantastic organization that at times in my life where I'd needed helped me. But of course, the opposite side of that coin is that sometimes it will ask you to go and do some things that are not particularly nice to do.
Right. Yeah, sure. Okay, let's go to question 9. Were F.3 squadrons allowed to do workups in order to be cleared down to 100 feet AGL, or was this only for GR1s, GR4s? And what did you think of the procedural differences between Royal Navy and RAF pilots after training? I remember hearing that Royal Navy pilots were usually cleared down to 100 feet without a workup, while the RAF were only cleared down to 250 feet.
Right. First of all, I don't know about the Royal Navy. Because if ever we had an exchange officer with us, he would work to our rules. The F.3 force, 250 feet. That was it. And the GR guys did do workups down to, I can't remember whether they called it very low level or ultra low level. They did do that. We didn't. We would dip into low level to shoot people and then pop straight back out again. We didn't really like being down there. And in the mid-90s, there was a lot of, the start of the environmental concern, certainly around noise. So we tended, there was no reason for us to go rushing around at 420 knots at 250 feet. So we practiced it sometimes. We would do it sometimes to shoot someone, but we never really stayed down there. Mm-hmm. And we certainly didn't go down to 100 feet legally. We didn't go down to 100 feet.
Roger, thank you. I have very fond memories of the absolute heyday, that I can remember when I was alive anyway, the late 80s, early 90s. Like you said, before Greta came along, when you can make as much noise as you like and kick out as much smoke as you like, what I call the good old days. And I happened to be, it's paying dividends now. I just happened to be, honestly, it must have been the best situated house in the whole of the UK. I was in the middle of every single military flight path, I swear. Americans, British, everyone.
Where was that?
It's in the middle of nowhere, just slightly north of Cambridge by 10 miles, and we're just in this wonderful corridor. Nothing. I wasn't near. I was right in the middle of Lakenheath, Mildenhall, Alconbury. We had a couple a couple out east. Yeah. I wasn't close to any major RAF. I mean, I was close to Wittering, but it wasn't. I wasn't close to any major RAF operational bases. But it just so happens they always came right over us because there's some kind of lovely corridor. If you look at it on an aviation map, which I have done recently, it's just this lovely little corridor where there's hardly any lanes. I don't really understand it, but you've got this lovely black spot where people
a low flying corridor with a one-way arrow on it.
Pretty much. And I don't really understand a thing, but it just and the low flyers. I remember, I swear it must have been a competition. The Yanks had the F-111, and that would barrel through it. What I would guess at 500 feet, and really fast. I mean, afterburners on, not supersonic, but afterburners on. And the only one that ever beat them was the GRs. And the Tornadoes, you say 250 feet, but I don't know. There's cutting it close. They were really nearly touching power lines at some point, and. Again, at the time, because I just grew up like that since a kid, it was perfectly normal. Like, of course you'd see tornadoes coming over so you could see their rivets and it literally destroys your windows. Why wouldn't that be normal? And now it's like I would kill to be able to see planes like that again. I never will, but you don't realise how lucky you are. Anyway, sorry, that was my own personal bit of thing I thought I'd add in. Right, very good. This one here, I'm going to open up. Okay, as far as I understand, low flying in the UK for fixed wing aircraft is done at 420 knots, and all turns made at 4G. Didn't realise that. I understand it is important to maintain speed in the aircraft, as in the event of engine failure, the extra speed will allow for an aircraft to abort and climb up to a safer altitude. Could you explain why all turns are made at 4G? Is this to make sure turns are all the same radius?
Right. Certainly in flying training on the Hawk, advanced flying training, 420 knots, 4G. Absolutely. That was what you planned it at. But if you're late, you're going to fly a bit faster. And if the turn's a bit tighter, you're going to pull a bit more G. Out in the real world, the most important thing is to be on time, on target. So you will plan a speed to do your navigation at, and you will plan the IP target run, so the last part of running into the target to deliver a weapon at a speed, usually a little bit faster, and then your subsequent escape. But you'll have to ask some of your GR boys, but I think they used to be able to deliver from a four aircraft at low level with a time on target of something like 5 seconds accuracy.
Yep.
So that is the thing to get to, not you would plan a speed, but then you'll fly the speed you need to achieve the accuracy. It's as simple as that, because you want to drop your weapon at exactly the right time. It's really quite important. And certainly when you've got multiple aircraft going over a target at low level, you want to have them separated as well. Oh, and they do it on TFR in the cloud. Crazy guys. Not for me.
That's fair enough. No, it's
No.
it's really genuinely impressive. We've got them leading us at the moment in a campaign where we're literally doing exactly that. And I don't mean F-18s where it's all done for you on little computers. We're doing this with literally our knee pads, our biro pen, and our little
Yeah.
map we've got on the thing. And it's I tell you what, it's difficult. It's when you're doing it, it's not necessarily enjoyable because it's actually very stressful. But when you pull it off, it's like nothing else. It's like we put that much work into doing that, and okay, some of us got lost, some of us hit a mountain, but the majority of us got bombs on target. There's probably no one else out there in the gaming world that could do that, and we're just absolutely chuffed with it, and it's amazing. And
No, that's brilliant because that's the end product at the end of Advanced Flying Training on the Hawk. Used to be lead a pair, first run attack on the range, 2 targets somewhere in Wales, 5-second accuracy, getting bounced by another staff member, and then leading a recovery, all using a stopwatch, a map, and a compass. Nothing else.
right,
And that is the hardest course I've ever done in my whole life. It was very, very difficult. And I sometimes say the best pilot I ever was the day I left Advanced Flying Training, because after that, you got more aids to help you. So the Tornado wasn't difficult to fly because you've got computers, you've got someone in the back, because you want your platform that you're going to deliver the weapon with to be easy to fly. You don't want it to be difficult. You want it to be super, super easy so that you can produce the mission effect that you want. So yeah, when I left flying the Hawk, I was probably the best pilot I'll ever be. It's been downhill ever since, mate.
honestly, and how true is that? In that for some reason, I've got worse and worse and worse and worse, and that's because I don't specialise in anything. Personally, in DCS, I have to do everything now. I have to bomb, I have to do absolutely everything I have to do. And that means I am basically terrible at everything because, no one can fly all these planes. But just coming back to what you said there, I found that really interesting. So, again, this is a relatively new field to me, the kind of stuff you're talking about at the moment. And let's say theoretical, the new, let's say brand new Eurofighter pilots going into the Typhoon, brand new, a few years, Tempest pilots going into the Tempest.
Yeah.
You think it's still really important that they do that manual training over Wales with the manual before they go into their brand new Tempest, where it's all done for you?
That's a really good question. I don't know what the Air Force thinks, but I would hazard a guess that the training is the argument used to be that, if you go to war and this doesn't work and System X doesn't work, you've got a manual backup. I think in the modern world, if something doesn't work, you probably don't do it. But it has 2 other great things. First of all, it teaches you the absolute basics of what your computer is doing. And it's really important that you understand that. And secondly, it's a grading system. It's designed to find the boys and girls, because they're all young, who are going through that, and you pick out the ones you really want. You pick out the guys and girls who you can tell straight away in a high pressure, very technical flying training system, people who are not going to fail. Who are not going to pass. They show themselves really quickly when it starts to get difficult. And the later you get in your flying training system, the more expensive it is to train people, and the more money you've wasted if you weed them out. So you need to weed people out. Sounds horrible, but it's true. You want people, I want people sitting in Tempest or Typhoon or F-35 today who are the best people that the country can find. And they need to be there by right, not by, sneaking through or it'll be all right. Yeah. So the training system has to be really hard. So yes, I'd like to see the basics still done in a different way with a more modern aircraft. So that the newer Hawks, I think the RAF had its Hawks updated to bring in things like TV screens and things, because the jump from the old Hawk T1A to Typhoon was just too big. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with learning the basics.
Roger, excellent. Okay, I'd agree with that for what it's worth. It's just taught me to be a much more rounded thing. And the thing about understanding what you said there, for me, the best guys overall are the guys that know more, because more systems you really understand. I don't know how to quantify that argument, but it's just something I've come across. Okay. Right, next question. Well, these are really good questions. They're getting really good answers. I'm enjoying this.
It's going to be a long video, Cap.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we'll terminate whenever you get bored or want to need to go and do something, basically. But I don't know. Sometimes you just find someone you hit it off with. You just can't stop
Okay.
talking. Given your experience flying as Red Air during the red flag, what is most effective? Most effective way to provide adversarial training in terms of the overall strategy? Were you trying to win, or simply just mimicking tactics known to be used by threat nations, even if they were known to be less effective? For example, intense person versus person DCS missions often see the bad guys, constantly trying completely new tactics that force the blue guys to adapt quickly and try and keep up. I didn't really get that, but what do you make of that?
There's some really good points in that. So, as I mentioned earlier, when you start red flag day one, the bandits, Red Air, are very they have the handcuffs on, very much so. And towards the end of the week, it is very much the handcuffs are off. You can do whatever you like, but you're still simulating. In the days I did it, Warsaw Pact weapons. So this is a problem with DCS. So you'll use things like R77 and R27.
Absolutely.
They mean nothing to me because I learned the NATO. So Archer AA11.
No, we don't do that.
Alamo 10 Alpha 10 Charlie. So so you will attempt to use the weapons in the way that whoever your imaginary threat is would use them, but how you get into a position to use them by the end of the week when you're Red Air is really good fun. Red Air is good fun. There's very little training value in it, but it's great fun. And when it comes to massive debrief at the end where they stop every 30 seconds to measure people's shots and work out who's dead, as a big long debrief, Red gets cleared off early so you can go and have a drink. So Red Air is definitely better. So trying to answer the questions. It does provide really good training. You do just mimic tactics, but then you work it up towards the end of the week to do crazy stuff. And yeah, the bit about Red constantly trying, that's exactly what you do. By day 5 of Red Flag, or halfway into the second week of it, you're really trying to push Blue Air hard, because one of the you must have heard the phrase flexibility is the key to air power. No. So you have a grand plan and you launch your plan, and then the plan doesn't survive first contact with the enemy. What do you do now? And that, if you're trying to train military leaders, you need to have people who can see the world and their plan just get destroyed, but then come up with a way of coping with it.
Roger.
And the best people are the people that can do that.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Philosophical. I like it. Next question. How far have the military simulators come since the F.3 sim at Coningsby? Sounds like this was written by someone who knows it. All variants of the F-35 are single seat. Do you think simulators are enough to safely train new pilots before going solo, unlike traditional OCUs, which rely on the use of two-seaters?
So simulators have come a long way. Look at us. I'm sitting with a PC here playing a high fidelity simulator game, which appears to me to be pretty accurate in terms of the way in which the aircraft I fly is modeled. So I only fly the F-18. Going back to your having to be a jack of all trades, I'm the master of none at the moment. I'm just sticking with the F-18. So simulators have come a long way, and the F3 simulator had no visual. So it was no visual. It was a procedures and emergency trainer. So you could simulate almost any emergency in the aeroplane, and you could do BVR type training in it. But you would do your visual training on an OCU and then on a squadron. Can you train pilots only in the sim? Yes. Yes, you can. Doing it now on Typhoon. So there's still an OCU, but more and more of the flying is being moved into the sim because it's really expensive. And it's sad to say, but militaries are run by politicians, or politicians say how much a military can spend, and if it can save money on training, then it can spend more money on ops, etc. So sims are used more and more now. Definitely.
Okay. Next question. What was the attitude of the other air forces towards the RAF during Red Flag? The RAF built up quite a good reputation at early Red Flags for their consistently punching above their weight. Was this still the case when you participated, or had the RAF become yet another generic NATO force?
I would like to think that we were well respected. Yeah, I think so. I think that Britain and the USA has had a very close relationship really since the end of the Second World War, and politicians talk about the special relationship, but it does have a lot of really good outcomes for the UK military, and certainly for the Americans as well. They get a lot from us, and I have never been made to feel by either the US Navy, the Marines, or the Air Force that we weren't wanted or welcome. America is one of those amazing countries, if you've ever been there, that because it's so big and there are so many people, it has absolutely the best of everything and absolutely the worst of everything. So its bell curve distribution is huge, and the numbers down at either end of it are massive. And the people that I've worked with from the American side, certainly in test and development, super smart people. And they're just like everyone else in the world. There's people who really who are perhaps not very friendly, and there are people who are quite friendly. But I've never been made to feel unwelcome.
Awesome. Okay. Following my previous question, were the RAF F3s chosen to participate in Red Air in order to simulate threat aircraft? If so, which one, and were the tactics and procedures also changed in order to mimic those used by the threat country? So what could it represent?
I think we've already answered most of that.
Yeah, I think
we've
so.
Certainly, so old Warsaw pack stuff like floggers and things like that, up to MiG-29. So we simulate MiG-29.
Okay.
Obviously not in a turning fight.
No. Okay. Next question. As the F.3 squadrons transitioned onto Typhoon, were there any major doctrinal changes that came with operating a completely different platform for the first time? Did tactics used by F.3 pilots cater towards the Tornado's superior performance at low level, as well as the high altitude when supersonic, or was flying faster than Mach 1 too inefficient? Is low-level flying still a viable tactic today?
Well, yes, low-level flying is still a viable tactic today. If you want to get past an SA-10, you're going to need SEAD, and you're going to need to hide from it. And terrain masking works against any radar. So it's still a viable tactic. When I thought about this question, I thought, well, maybe the biggest change from going to Tornado to Typhoon was technology, and it was a big change. Definitely, the higher level of technology. I thought it might be going to an aircraft that was true multi-role, so it could do air defense and ground attack at the same time. Another big change. But for me personally, the change I saw might surprise you, and that's you went from a squadron with, I don't know, 25 to 30 pilots and navs to half of that, to 12 to 15 people on the operational side, not the ground crew side. So all of a sudden, because you got rid of navigators, half your aircrew were missing, and it changed the atmosphere on squadrons, because you were either flying, running the desk, doing a secondary duty, or off. And the biggest change I noticed was that there weren't the coffee bar culture died a little bit, in that you get 4 or 5 people in the coffee bar who've got half an hour and would have a chat about, oh God, do you know what I did last week, or do you know what I saw? And you'd learn a lot in a coffee bar, particularly when you're junior pilot, junior nav. So the biggest change for me, this is only my personal opinion, was losing half of the people, half of the aircrew on a squadron, which changed the way in which people, it changed what was important to people. And a good example would be, in the old days, we go back to F4 now, if I knew more than you, then I was a better pilot than you. Because when we fought together, it was 50-50, we were probably the same. But if I knew more than you, I was better. And that kind of died with Typhoon, because the squadron had so few people and so much work to do. It just wasn't time for that nonsense anymore. Yeah, I think it's a bit sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's what happened.
Almost feels like the end of the kind of like Top Gun film when they're, playing beach ball and socialising, and,
Yeah,
and they've gone to kind
think
of.
about it. 50% of your people are gone, and it definitely changed the atmosphere on the squadron.
Interesting. Never thought about that, but that's the kind of insight we get now. Okay, very good. Next question. How involved were you in the debate as to whether or not to equip the Typhoon with an internal cannon? And
Not at all.
were pilots able to voice their concerns during this process? Probably not. I ask as currently the F-35 BC is highly criticised for poor kinematic performance and for not being equipped with an internal cannon, and yet pilots who have flown it unanimously sing its praises.
Well, I'd be tempted to believe pilots over newspapers. When you become an expert in something, and I've only ever been an expert in one thing my whole life, and that's aviation, first military, then civil, you start to see things on the news or in papers, you read them, and you go, this is nonsense. This is utter nonsense. And if you extrapolate that forward, you realise that it's all nonsense, or a lot of it is. So I wasn't involved with, the gun thing. F-35, I've flown the sim. That's as close as I've ever got to it. But I would believe what the pilots say rather than what, some journalist with an axe to grind has to say.
Roger, and it's true, unanimous, because we always get press, not necessarily press, but we always get non-pilots, should we say, slagging it off, maybe the Raptor as well. And every time you speak to the pilots, it's true, they always sing its praises. And
yeah.
I mean, like you said, they're probably just right. And the thing is, we always seem to go through this. Every next generation of aircraft, people hate it. And
well, we'll come to the question about the F3 further down, the blue circle question.
Right, yeah. Okay, what was the attitude of pilots when transitioning into new aircraft type, be it Phantom to F3, F3 to Typhoon? I heard a rumour that the Phantom nav, that in the lead up to Operation Dural, the MOD planned to send Phantom F3s.
Well, F4s, but never mind.
Instead of the Tornado F3s, as the Tornado had built up a bad reputation for poor kinematic performance at high altitude, but decided to send the F3s when realising we had just sold billions of pounds worth of Tornadoes to the Saudis. I guess to kind of keep up. Keep up appearances. Was this just a rumour, or do pilots remain sceptical when transitioning to new aircraft types?
That is such a good question. I don't know who asked that, but
these are probably the best questions I've ever had. They're really getting good at this. I could never do anything like this.
It's really difficult to answer as well. I think if change is difficult. That's why people sell books with how to manage change, and how, when I was in management, we did courses about managing change. People don't like change. So there will be some F4 guys who went to the F3 who went, my F4 was much better at 40,000 feet, or blah, 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 blah. And it was called the blah jet. So in the RAF, F3 guys called XF4 mates blah mates. They used to fly the blah jet because it was blah, blah, blah. On the F4, blah, blah, blah. So the blah jet, or the Jehovah jet, because you weren't allowed to say Jehovah. So if you look at the F4, F3 differences, absolutely 100% at high altitude, the F4 had better kinematics by a bit. But the machine itself, in the ability to deliver weapons, the Tornado was way, way ahead of it. In terms of protection from jamming, in terms of its radar ability. So I was really surprised. I started flying the F-18 in DCS. It's got range well cert and tracks well scan. And when you put it in track well scan, it can only track a couple of targets in the, I can't remember what they call it, to be able to shoot them. And it narrows the scan width down. The F3 radar would track, a 60-60 scan, 4-bar, and it would track, 20 different targets in TWIS.
Yeah, it was because my dad built the analog to digital converter for it, and that's why.
Yeah, so probably that big piece of aluminium. So I think that most people when they move are, some people when they move are a bit hesitant, but once you get in gear, you see the benefits, definitely. The worst I've ever seen was when I did an exchange tour with the Italian Air Force, which is why I say I lived in Italy. And there were guys on the F.3 who were navigators who used to be pilots. And what they'd done was, when they closed the starfighter squadrons, they said, you 10 are going to be pilots, you 10 are going to be navigators. And the pilots went, great. And the navigators went, what the and that caused a lot of friction. That's the worst I've ever seen. But it's like any change. People blah on about the past because it was better. But the fact was the F3 was a lot better than the F4.
There we go. End of it. Right. Ex-F3 engineer here. That's handy. So 1435 flight. We saw a trend in the very early 2000s of RB199. These are the engines, aren't they? Rejections, because the combustion chambers were literally melted. So give it up. How high and how fast was the record?
Well, the legal limit was 50,000 feet, so 50,000 feet, which was sort of reached like that and then fell out. 1.92 was the highest Mach, and I chased down an F-16 at red flag at a little bit over 800 knots on the deck. And the aircraft was like a tuning fork. It was going, talk about one of those little gold nuggets of through your career that you remember that. I remember chasing a red Air F-16 on the deck, supersonic at red flag, and he pitched back. And for once in my life, I went, SRAM, slave, uncaged, fired, and it all actually worked. So 800 and something knots on the deck, 1.92 altitude. 50,000 feet was a legal limit, so 50,000 feet.
There we go. That's all we're saying. Very good. Is the back seater in the F3 really a spare flare?
Right. You know what? 20 years ago I'd have said that, but now I'm out of the Air Force. I can admit that they were really, really good guys and girls, and they were very good at their job. So when we sit in our F-16 or F-18 in DCS, it kind of just does it for you, as long as you point it generally in the right direction. The F3 radar needed a little bit more. It was a bit more mantrolic, it needed a little bit more aid. Although I still haven't worked out how to get out of ACM modes when you split from in the F-18, I'll run out from something, and I can't reset the radar. It's just going.
There are several ways of doing it, and I don't think any of them are the way you are supposed to do it. That's the funny thing. But
Typhoon's got a big button with reset on it. You push reset and it goes 70-74 bar. Dunk. Brilliant.
Americans aren't that logical, I'm afraid. Yes, I do get frustrated flying the Hornet.
So, they did a really good job. And the workload was, and the management of it was very clear. At long range, it was mostly the navigator providing directional assistance to the pilot. So you're managing the radar, managing the data link. And between you come up with a tactic, you would implement it. But as soon as you get into visual range, then the workload moves into the front seat, of course. And it worked really well. And it was always good to have another mate to drink with if you get diverted somewhere. So,
yeah, very good.
I've mentioned alcohol 3 times now.
It was because you're in lockdown. Really bad, you're in lockdown. Yeah. Everyone's gone a bit crazy, to be honest. But very good. Yeah, I've always heard everyone likes, as long as you get on with your rear seater, an extra pair of eyes is always useful.
Yeah.
Always useful. Okay. Next question. I hear that engineers make the best pilots. How much did your interesting aerosystems degree help with the flight test and requirements manager work?
Well, the reason why the Air Force paid for my master's is because they then send you into flight test and requirements management. So the Aerosystems course, which is an RAF course, is designed to get you into that world. And what you tend to do is, because you're a pilot and you've been operational and now you have an engineering background, it allows you to work with industry, between industry and if I was to say an OEU, would you know what that is?
Negative.
Operational Evaluation Units.
No.
So they're the small unit that takes the new aeroplane and then develops it throughout its lifetime and provides advice to the front line about how it should use it. And you work between those pilots and industry to try and translate, because often pilots will say, we need a button, and industry will put a button in, and then the pilots will say, we didn't mean there, and industry will go, where do you want it then? And all this time this is happening, time's running on and millions are being wasted. So the idea was that you'd have someone in the middle that would stop industry doing things that were stupid for pilots, but industry thought it was really clever, and stop pilots asking for things that industry perhaps couldn't deliver or would have a knock-on effect that they didn't understand. Whether it worked or not, I don't know. But I couldn't have done that work without doing the course first. No way.
Okay.
Because it taught me to write. That's what it did. It taught me to write technically, to analyze and to write. So.
Very good. There's a good reason why they did it then. Excellent.
Yeah.
21. Radar techie to F.3 pilot. Amazing and inspirational, really. Genuinely, no sarcasm. But you're probably most likely to know. Is it true that the F.3 radar had a blue circle logo on LRU-1? I don't get it.
Right, okay. So blue circle, I don't know if it still is, but in the late 80s was a manufacturer of concrete. And when the first F3s came into service, the radar wasn't ready. And if you're missing that huge lump of metal in the front of the aeroplane, you need to put ballast in it. So they put concrete ballast in it. So they called it the blue circle radar. So for the first, 6 months or something, the radar wasn't ready. So they had blue circle radars, which whether someone had put a blue circle on an LRU-1, I don't know. But
That's
it is
funny.
true. Right at the beginning, the F3 had concrete in the nose, not a radar.
Wow. Okay. And apparently that's not that unusual. I think the first F-16s that went to war and shot down baddies didn't actually have the radars in them, or didn't have the radars working, or something along those lines. They didn't,
I don't know. I know all sorts of stories which I shouldn't probably talk about, but sometimes things go a bit wrong or get delayed, shall we say. There we go.
Very good. 22. Who gets to decide the weapons loadout for the day, I suppose, or whatever? If it is you, do you have some common or favourite loadout? So they think it's like DCS, where you just get to open up the box and choose your missiles, which is a bit different in real life, I imagine.
Well, at home in training, you would simulate having 4+, meaning 4 Skyflash, 4 winders, and a gun. When we went on ups in the Gulf, I think we only carried 2 winders because of the weight. We had 4 radar missiles and 2 winders. That was decided for us. I think the grown-ups on a squadron probably did that. So when I did proper operations, I wasn't a grown-up yet. I was a flight lieutenant, a captain. So probably the squadron boss with his senior management team. Don't know.
Okay. This one, bit different. What is the worst plane you've ever flown? Must be something you didn't like.
Beechcraft Duchess. Closely followed by the Grob 115.
Right.
Why? Well, the Duchess is what I did when I transitioned from military to civilian. I had to do a twin rating because the F3 wasn't counted as a twin. And I went to a school that had 2 Beechcraft Duchesses, and I think they last saw some servicing maybe 10 years ago. There was a box of oil cans in the back seat, and I asked why, and they said, because you need to put a can of oil in each engine every day.
Wow.
The parking brakes didn't work, the engine synchronizers didn't work, but you know what? It was cheap, and it got me through the license thing. But from a pure flying point of view, the Grob, which is, I think it's now gone out of the RAF. So it was used for elementary flying training for a long time, and also we flew kids in it. It had a long, thin, high aspect ratio glider wing, and the roll rate was pants. So you'd full stick, and it would just. But you could flick it at that time. So do you know what flicking is?
No, I don't.
Okay, so have you spun an airplane?
Yeah, Tomcat. And it's like a flat spin, you mean?
So you pull the stick all the way back and you boot one of the rudders, and the aircraft pitches and yaws at the same time, and it goes whee.
Yeah, we've always called it a snap roll. Whether that's true in any way.
Yeah, so you can get really high roll rates out of it. You could do that, and then I think I flew an engine fuel injector pipe came off. I think a propeller came off one, so they stopped that, which was rather boring. But there we go. So that was a bit of a dull aeroplane to fly, but for flying kids, it was perfect because you do maximum 4G, 20 minutes. Hello, blogs. What do you want to do? Straight and level, sir. Was that aerobatic? Certainly, and off you go. So it was good fun.
Very good. Okay. Right. Is it true that the low? I think we've had this one, but the low level height was judged by sheep having legs at 100 feet, and cows having legs at I get it, at 200 feet.
I was taught if you can see the sheep's legs, you're at 250 feet and go no lower. That's what I was taught. I don't know whether it's true.
Right. You know what? We've just got cows in DCS, so maybe that's something I'm going to have to start learning. Okay, very good. For you, what was the most challenging aspect of learning to fly fast jets?
It was the advanced flying training course on the Hawk, where instead of flying, you learn to fly the airplane quickly, and now you're doing stuff with the airplane. So you're doing high-to-low nav, into delivering weapons on time, into doing air combat, lots of high-performance formation work. And at that time, the instructional technique seemed to be, right, blogs, come in, sit down. What are we doing today? Dive bombing, sir. Okay, how do you do that? So you brief the instructor, you get in the airplane, you take you out to the range, demo it. You do it, you come back, and he would go, well, that was rubbish. I can do it. Why can't you? And walk out the room. That's how it felt like. It was really hard, and you had to know your procedures, the systems, everything inside out. That was the highest pressure thing I've ever done in terms of training. And the sad thing is that as soon as people start to struggle, they lose sleep, they get tired, they struggle more, and it's one of these horrible spiraling down things. You see people who you thought quite good crash and burn and fail the course. But I have to say that was the hardest thing, was that change from just flying an airplane to actually doing something with it with a tactical mindset.
Okay, very good. Do you play DCS? Yes. And given your experience with military simulators, what are the strengths and weaknesses of DCS as a software compared to real-life military simulators? Okay, so a military simulator will simulate the weapons perfectly. Of course, DCS is... Eagle Dynamics, I don't know if they have the right information for lots of things. And I've seen lots of mods. I see you flying F-22s. And the Russian equivalent was the Su-57 or something like that. Going Mach 5, I'm a bit. Yeah, we're firing 9Xs and 120 Charlies and blah blah blah. How well they're modelled, I think that they're making a guess, aren't they? Which is all you can do, because otherwise you need secrets and things. And but in terms of it's the way it works is fantastic, and it's the closest thing I've seen to a high-fidelity modern military simulator. Really good. I think the next step from this is building yourself a cockpit and having a dome that goes all the way back and a 3D protection system. But I've just bought that. Oh, hello. And I'm struggling with it a bit at the moment, to be honest with you, but I'll get there. So in the military, military training, you're slowly introduced to things with instructors, and you have books that you have to read, but you're instructed and then tested, and your knowledge is good. So I've launched into DCS, Voice Attack, SRS, this thing, the two stick tops, which are the stick and throttle, which are apparently for an A10. So remapping of buttons. So see you talk about often in your videos, where the hell's that button? Which when you stick with one airplane and you fly it professionally, you know it. I can put my fingers on the button in an F3 now and know what each one does. That's muscle memory, right? You just know it. It's drilled into you. So the strengths of DCS are simply that it's the highest fidelity game I've ever seen. It's incredible, and I'm really impressed by it.
Eagle have done an incredible job. I guess because they have Wags on YouTube. That I don't know who Wags is. I may have met him once. I don't know, but I get an impression that he's ex-Mil and knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, because he does. He uses words that you know a layman wouldn't use. And I'm super impressed. I really am. So what's its weakness? So 14-year-old kids who beat you in a 1v1 dogfight. One, won't fit in the aeroplane for real. Two, when they have 9G for the first time, it'll snap them in half. Three, the motion will make them puke their guts out. Four, the physical and mental stress of reality of doing what we do for fun. Oh, I crashed. The reality is death. They're completely different things. So I was doing some 1v1 today, online, PvP, and we hit each other. Which is very realistic for war. But in training, you spend a lot of time and effort trying to not do that. So the weaknesses are that there's no G, there's no sense of motion, although the VL headset's pretty good, actually.
No fear?
No fear. Yeah, that's it, Cap. There's no fear. If you crash, just reset and play again.
Yeah.
So you can do things in DCS that you would never dream of doing in a real airplane.
Yeah, interesting.
Which is a strength and a weakness, it's both.
It's a really interesting thing you brought up there about colliding. You're trained in real life to never collide. One thing we would never do in DCS is train how to not to collide because you don't care, right? It's a really interesting thought. I never even thought about that. So this is the thing you only get from real pilots that you just never think about. Very interesting. Okay, excellent description. And the next one you'll have to help me with. What is quotation marks tiscloida? Go on, if you're allowed to talk about it.
I don't know whether to answer this in like a super confident way or tell the truth. What do you want?
The truth usually is funnier.
The truth is I had to look it up. It's a radar van for an SA-2 missile system.
Right, obviously.
I think. That's the only reference I could find to it. I don't know what that is.
All right. Okay. Well, I said ask any question.
There it is.
What was your attitude when going through elementary flight training? Were you adamant about getting streamed onto fast jets, or would you have enjoyed flying multis as well? I ask as final year mechanical engineering student who I know who this is, finds himself constantly toying with the idea of applying for EFT and have been for the last few years now.
Okay. I always wanted to go fast jets because I considered it the most exciting. I would have enjoyed flying multis, definitely. And if you're a person who would enjoy flying multis and is not that fussed about fast jets, the big advantage of flying multis is when you come to the end of your career in the Air Force and you want to transition into the civilian world, it's a lot cheaper.
Why?
Because I flew, I don't know, over 1,000 hours on the Tornado and lots of hours. And the civilian world considered me not to have a training rating, which is why I had to go and fly the Beechcraft Duchess. That cost a lot of money. The instrument rating that you had to do cost me £1,000. And whilst I was flying it, I was terrified. If I fail this test, it's another £1,000 and another £1,000. And it's on an airplane that I've been flying for 8 hours and I didn't really know very well. Whereas if you're in the multi-engine world, I got friends who used to fly multis in the military. They got the examiner to come on board their own RAF aircraft, sit in the jump seat, have a cup of coffee while they flew the aircraft they flew every single day. See the advantage there.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah. In my day, the multis got better hotels as well. But it all depends what you want. I'm so glad I flew fast jets. I really enjoyed it. I couldn't do it now. I'd kill myself in a second. I'm just old and slow now. But I think if you love flying, and I do, you'd be happy flying anything. I do enjoy flying.
Okay, very good. How many times did you hear Arkov or Eng? Okay. Did you
RCOV to Eng? It's the recirculation changeover valve in the Tornado fuel system that flips when you start the engine. And I'm pretty sure they used to call it on the headset during the start because you had a ground crew chap on a headset, and I don't think we had the repeaters in the cockpit. I think they used to tell us, because if it didn't switch over, there was certain issues with cooling of things with the fuel. I'm not an expert on it, and it's a long time ago, and I don't have the books anymore. But I think it switched the cooling circuit for the fuel, because everything in a jet airplane is cooled by fuel. So the oil's cooled by fuel, gearbox is cooled by fuel, and then the fuel gets hot, so you have to have a fuel cooler as well. So that's what it meant. It was the recirculation changeover valve.
Right. Okay. Approximately
completely pointless knowledge that no one needs.
Approximately 1% of us understood that. Okay, very good. Did we join up together? March 1983, Swindby 15 flight, then RAF Cosford, TAR DE 67 Air Radar Tech Course on to Wattisham for me. Well, it didn't leave his name, so that doesn't help. But
so just for this person, no, December 83. Can't remember the flight at Swindby. TAR D 79 LTEC AR. Then I went to Coningsby. So that'll mean something to him.
That's that. Right, I'll have to get him on as well. 31. Have you ever been caught in low-level chase? Heard the F.3 was the fastest out there at low level.
No, I haven't. And it did go very, very fast. But you're throwing fuel out the back really quickly. But I never got caught. Never got caught in an F.3 running away at low level. No.
Roger. And also, it sounded like a tuning fork. That's one that will stick with me.
Oh.
Interesting. Okay. 32. Did you get to fly on operation with the TRD? Was it worth carrying? Did it work? I was involved in some of the development trials, so interested to know.
The simple answer is yes, yes, yes. I did fly with the turd. The towed radar decoy, the turd. Was it worth carrying? Absolutely 100%. Did it work? Yes, I've seen the films. I never deployed it because I was never shot at by a system that we would have deployed the turd for. But I've seen the videos of the trials work. And the person who was involved in the trials will know where that was. Well worth carrying. Made you feel very comfortable. Good thing to carry. To not break any secrets, it was a aerial on a 100-meter piece of electric string, and basically what it did to a radar that was tracking you would go over here, over here, over here. The idea being that the missile would go past the turd and not fuse, rather than going past you and fusing.
So it was multi-use. I thought it got blown up. How interesting.
No, once it was streamed, it was out. You couldn't wind it back in, so you had to drop it. But all the clever electronics were in the pod, and the bit that you hung out the back was just the aerial.
All right, because so we're getting it soon in DCS, and I've always thought it will save you from one missile, because I assumed there was a big dangly thing at the back that got blown up by the missile. I didn't realise it would.
Go on.
I didn't realise it would continuously work and the missile wouldn't fuse. I didn't get that.
Well, we were taught that if you look at the way fuses work on missiles, as it goes flashing past the turd, there shouldn't be enough. We're talking about something
exactly
this big. There shouldn't be enough there to make the fuse go off. But yes, if it went bang, you'd like to think that unless it's something big like an SA2, SA3 with a really big warhead, that you wouldn't get hurt by it. It was a good piece of kit.
Very interesting. Okay, very good. 33, LOL. Did you learn to play a musical instrument to get away from technology, coming from an IT tech who is playing bass?
It sounds so middle class. When I was a kid, I had piano lessons, violin lessons, which I gave up because my violin teacher had a lazy eye and it freaked me out when I was 13. That sounds awful, doesn't it? But at 13, you're, and my brother had a guitar, always music, always around the house. So in our house now, we have a piano, 5 guitars. We've got a music studio in the shed in the garden. So, music's always been part of my life. And my wife was a singer, songwriter as well. So, So what was it? Did I do it to get away from technology? No, it's always been there. Always been there.
Roger. I played drums for a decade and a half, and I'm saving up for a new electric kit as we speak, and I'm going to start up again on a small level.
I tried to play drums once, and I could do boom, boom, And that was it. Nothing else. I'm not coordinated enough.
But you should do, because you've got stick, throttle, and 2 rudder pedals. You should, I'm sure you might.
Yeah, but you don't. The rudder pedals in a fighter jet, unless you're on the ground, they're footrests. Although I've been experimenting with the F.18 at high alpha, trying to get it.
Yeah, it's pirouette. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, maybe we'll get a band one day. 34, if we're ever allowed out of our house again. 34, can you give us your opinion about becoming a military pilot and in the same time starting a family? That's a contradiction of terms, I suppose. Are they compatible, youngster who wants to follow your steps?
Do you know what? I've seen a lot of divorces because you spend a lot of time away from home. I am lucky in that when I met my wife, we lived in different countries. So the first 2 years of our courtship, if you like, we saw each other, I don't know, for a week every 2 months or something like that. So it was always normal. And then when we had kids, I was, first in the Air Force and then flying for a commercial airline. So they're very, very used to me not being there. Do you mind me not being there, George? That is the response I got from my 11-year-old. So, this is getting a bit deep now, but I think if you're with the right person, then it shouldn't really matter. But the question's about starting a family, and lots of your valued viewers will have been through, childbirth. And it's bloody hard work, and it's really stressful, and women tend to get the worst end of it, and it can be very stressful for you. Certainly from lack of sleep was a big one, I remember. But it's like all these things, you try and manage it. I'm very lucky. Our first child was a nightmare in terms of lack of sleep for 2 years. I think it's something you should consider very carefully, definitely, because the number one job of a dad, I honestly believe that, is to keep your family safe and support them. And if you're the other side of the world doing military things, which is great fun, maybe starting a family is not the right thing to do, unless you're already in the military, and then it's too late then, isn't it?
Roger.
I don't know. I don't really know what. Do you know what? I don't know what I'm talking about, Cap.
Well, you
all
don't.
I know is I got through it.
I know all about that as well.
I have a fantastic wife.
That's yeah. There was just one more thing to add to that, down the kind of logic side of things. In the a military pilot, I don't want this to sound the wrong way, doesn't last that long. Once they get a little bit older, they have to move on. When does a fighter pilot retire or stop?
When I was in, it was 55. They've raised it now because weirdly the Royal Air Force is really struggling to recruit people, and I think that's a direct result of what's on TV these days, and the way that the press covers everything, and the fact that at least up until COVID, if you wanted to be a pilot, certainly before the 2 years before COVID, there were lots of jobs and wages were good. Now it's completely different. Now you must have seen newspaper articles about 747 pilot now works for Waitrose delivering shopping or something.
Yeah.
So I'm really lucky that I still have a job. So, yeah, I mean, families are something that, I've learned the hard way because I've seen the effect it's had on other people, and I promised myself I'd never let it have that effect on my family, and that's one of the reasons why I left the military, actually. My wife's a lot happier that I don't have to go to Timbuktu and get shot up.
Okay. I've got a person. I'm going to leave that one alone, I think. I've got a very good story about a friend, but I just don't think it's suitable. So, okay. Okay, last question here. Has ECAS got easier? We had an A10 and Hornet cover on operations, and it was much simpler system than the British. We also used live jets on the first and only day of training, but had a week in a classroom learning the British method, and not a jet our pilot to be seen. can struggle with this one. Also had lunch with A10 crew afterwards, sat in the planes, and generally learned more and felt more comfortable that way. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. The UK doesn't really have a proper CAS aircraft in terms, something like the A10. So, I mean, we did do it, or they do it. I wouldn't know. The UK does some things its own way, and America does some things its own way. I think you'll have to ask a soldier. You'll have to ask a soldier who's been in Helmand Province.
Well, that's funny. We've got him on next, literally, believe it or not.
That's the question you need to ask them, whether they appreciated that or not.
Yeah, we've literally got a JTAC that called in A10, so we'll see what he says. Okay.
Yeah, asking the question, honestly, I can't answer that. I've only ever done it at a very small level during training. They teach you basics. That's all.
Okay, well, Chris, really good talking to you.
Thanks, Cap.
So, I mean, you're the fourth, fifth tornado pilot I've spoken to, and I don't know, you guys are just easy to get on with. So, what I suggest, obvious things. Thank you for giving up your time and listening to me witter on, and answer questions. And it really does. And I know this because I've spoken to some people. Some people really, really appreciate hearing from real pilots, including me, obviously. My desire is for you to now kind of get your wings in DCS and become another a valuable addition, because it really is changing our squad around, having these real pilots in. I mean, it doesn't make us better dogfighters or better AMRAAM fighters, but what it does is it makes it more. I don't want to say realistic. It is more realistic and just more worthwhile doing to kind of do it the real pilot way. We're really enjoying that. So that would be my request from you. That's it.
Yeah, well, if you I don't know, put me in touch or give me some pointers about who to talk to within your team and which part of the service to use, etc., that'd be really helpful. Yeah, because I really am a bit of a duffer at the moment.
Yeah, I'll get that done, and then we'll kind of get you online. I think that'd be great. Otherwise, anything from you before we sign off?
No, thank you. It's been interesting, and I did this because I heard the last one you did, and I thought that was fascinating. So I hope I haven't bored everybody stupid.
No, I think that's great, and it's good questions as well. The guys are getting really good at answering questions that actually matter. Brilliant. Thank you, Chris, and thank you everyone, and we'll see you later.
All the best. Thanks. Bye bye.